You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the Lord, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Serve Somebody with Steve and Emily podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Steve Bradshaw. And as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Emily Hallavy. Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
Excellent. What is on your mind today?
Well, last week we saw the fallout of Eric Swalwell's misfortunate decisions, and learned that he had been preying on some of his interns and staff members for several years. And while, of course, that upsets the California governor's race and the field for 2028 presidential candidates, I think what really resonated with me and with a lot of women that I know was just how it dredged up those feelings of vulnerability. And reflecting back when we were young and starting our careers, several friends posted like they either had a boss who was a predator or they had clients who, I've had clients who were predators.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, one time, not that it was a sexual predator, but I did have one client who I texted a friend of mine and I said, I'm going to see this client. If you don't hear from me within the hour, call the cops.
Wow.
This is the address that I'm at. If you don't hear from me, call the cops. That's how nervous this particular client made me.
Wow.
And physically uncomfortable.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
And so, you know, what I want to say too is that while we're quick to point out political, members of the political arena by party, Trump's a predator, Republicans are all predators, whatever. It does not have sexual assault rate does not have a political agenda at all. And in fact, it's been my experience that a lot of times it's the more woke men, the men who come off as being a feminist or come off as, Black power, they're like leading a cause. They can be some of the more insidious and most dangerous predators that I've met.
Wow. Well, I'm really sorry that you went through that, and for all of the young women who go through that, it's heartbreaking. I've been responsible for the development of young women throughout the course of my career, including my time in the military. And when I think about people that are taking advantage of a position of power, which is it's a power dynamic, it's messed up. It's really messed up. So Congressman Swalwell abused his power.
Yeah.
And as of today, when we're taping, I hear he has decided to not only drop out of the governor's race, but resign from Congress.
As he should.
Good. Probably sounds like criminal charges are warranted based on the interview I saw on CNN with one of his victims. It was having her go through what he did was astounding. And she did the interview, with her identity concealed because she's still afraid of potential repercussions, years after the fact as she's advanced in her career. That's very depressing and very sad. So, it's inexcusable in all circumstances.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a wonderful segue into what we're talking about today. So, but before we get into it with our guests, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Al Davis and all the wonderful folks at Davis Manufacturing, as well as my good friends Mike and Rebecca Reeves and all of the wonderful folks at Reeves & Associates for sponsoring today's program. We really do appreciate it. Now on with the agenda of the day. Today we're very honored to have as our special guest Jean Douglas, who is the CEO of the Women's Resource Center to End Domestic Violence. Jean, thank you so much for being with us today. As we begin, is there anything you would like to share with us?
No, I'm just glad to be here. I'm thankful for conversations I get to have about our work. So I'm looking forward to getting into our conversation.
Thank you so much. So we were recording this interview in the month of April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And this is the time to stand in solidarity with survivors. Therefore, it is altogether appropriate to have Jean Douglas with us today to talk about this critical issue. She is someone who has dedicated herself to combating this scourge, and we honor her commitment to this cause. Now, I became acquainted with Jean and the work of the Women's Resource Center to end domestic violence when I was in office, and I immediately became a supporter, not only with my advocacy, but with my financial support. And I distinctly remember when I visited the Safe House at Jean's invitation, and I can tell you that I was very impressed with the safe space that had been created for victims, and I was also impressed with the courage and the dignity displayed by the victims, as well as the professionalism and dedication of the staff. Now, candidly, this issue is more prevalent than even I was aware of. And the good people who work in this space deserve, in support of victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, merit our respect and our appreciation. So thanks again, Jean, for the work that you're doing. Thanks again for being with us today. So let's start with this. For the benefit of our audience, just tell us about the Women's Resource Center.
Sure.
What's your mission? What do you do?
Sure. It's a great time to talk about our work because this year we will be recognizing 40 years of doing this work, of doing domestic violence, now sexual assault work. We started in June of 1986. And we started 1 year after a fatality. A woman lost her life in front of her child on Memorial Drive, not very far from here at all. And she had been a well-known victim in that there were a lot of recurrences with her ex-husband who continuously tried to harm her, had gone to prison, and she had done what everyone says a woman should do when she's facing abuse, which is leave, call the police, right? And so she did all of those things and was pretty persistent and vigilant in the court cases. And at that time, there wasn't a Women's Resource Center. The district attorney's office was very involved to the extent where they were actually watching her home because he had just been released from prison for attempting to murder her. And he started looking for her again. Unfortunately, he found her on June 5th in 1985 at her home while her child was waiting on the bus stop and took her life that day. And 1 year later, the Women's Resource Center started, and we have continued over all of these years to do the work that I think our founders wanted us to do, that set out to do. And that is to support women, walk with families, walk with survivors in their journey to safety, and believing that they are the experts in their survivorship, like how that should look, how it needs to look. And so we've been on this long journey now with over 200,000 survivors.
Wow.
Incredible.
Wow. And that's just in DeKalb County?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so the Women's Resource Center has been open for 40 years. You've been there for 31 of those years. What drew you to the organization, and what's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately because 40 makes you reflect a lot, right? So what pulled me in, I was looking to volunteer in my community. I wanted to do some work with women and children. It's always been something that's been important to me. And I called. At that time, there was the phone book, if we remember what those were like. And then in the phone book, there were these blue pages, that kind of listed numbers and places to go. And there was the Women's Resource Center of DeKalb County was the name of it at that time. That was in that blue book, of blue pages of the phone book. And I dialed up. And this woman, Barbara Gibson, who I work with today, still answered the phone. and it said you can come in for a volunteer interview. And so I came in and I interviewed to be a volunteer. I was accepted into the volunteer class. And in my class, my cohorts were many survivors of domestic violence, more than I imagined I would ever be around at one time. And so that informed me that this was a bigger problem than I thought, than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I listened to those wise women and I started volunteering over at our safe house. I was really struck by the resilience, the fortitude of the women coming to us for services. And I also really admired the women doing the work. 'Cause it was really scary work back then. I mean, it still is today, and I think maybe because I've been in here as long as I have, I'm not as afraid of it as I was when I first started the work, but I also need to not take, that for granted. But yeah, the prevalence of the domestic violence, the many, many people that we were serving and that were calling us is what has kept me here and working with such a dedicated group of people who want to walk with survivors.
Yeah. So you went from volunteering to
Working, oh yeah, that part. Yeah. So there was a position that came up for child advocate, and it could have been any position at all, but I just knew I wanted to work here. I wanted to come, and so I applied for that job. Didn't get it initially. Someone else was hired, and then right before they were supposed to start, they said, "Oh, I changed my mind," and then they called me, and I was like, "Of course, I'll come." And so I started the Tuesday after Labor Day in 1994.
Wow. And now you're executive director.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So again, we talked about how big of an issue and how prevalent this issue is, and that number in DeKalb County of 200,000 victims served is pretty astounding. According to your website, somewhere between 14 and 25% of women are sexually assaulted by their intimate partners. That seems like an incredibly high number as well. Can you kind of dive into that number and tell us what is behind that?
Sure. And I've been surprised again because the sexual assault services are still new to us. March 26th this year was the year, it's been 1 year since we actually acquired DeKalb Rape Crisis Center, also known as Day League. We have been working with victims who have experienced sexual assault, typically in domestic violence relationships. This is new. I mean, because yes, we're still serving those, but these, most of, I would say, the cases that we're dealing with, people are being assaulted by strangers, people that they don't know, which blows my mind that you think you're just going to have a normal evening doing things that you typically do or that you should be able to do, and that it could just end in so much trauma. So the numbers, again, are blowing me away of people who are being sexually assaulted in our community. And I'm looking forward to continuing to kind of build these services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, speaking specifically towards women who are in abusive relationships, that number goes up even higher for assault by an intimate partner. Why is that all about power? Why is that dynamic there?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I remember when, I don't know if you remember, I probably shouldn't bring that case back up. Typically, people think that sexual assault is about someone who wants sex, that's what they're going for, but that just can't be. Because there are people, I mean, I think you can find someone to, have relations with that you don't have to lie and deceive and trick and drug to do it, right?
Right.
So this is about control, what you mentioned earlier, with a congressman who is in this elevated, powerful position that feels like they can have access and do things to people that they know they shouldn't do, and you shouldn't because you don't tell anybody you do it, right? it's hidden and it's a secret. So it's kind of mind blowing, that someone would want to exercise control over a person in such a traumatic fashion.
Harmful.
Very, very harmful and very difficult to process and to heal from
Yeah.
when it's over.
Yeah.
A lot of the victims that I've spoken with tend to look at what they could have done different. And and I hear that a lot also with domestic violence. People feeling like, if I had done this or done that, if I hadn't said this, I hadn't done that, if I hadn't gone to that bar, if I hadn't
Right.
yeah. And so I think those kind of conversations, like, while we can try to prevent some things, from happening, that's not the reason that sexual assault is happening. Just like that's not the reason that domestic violence happens.
Yeah. And the numbers that we've seen, have they gone down at all? Like, are they pretty static in terms of consistency across the past couple decades that you've been in this work? Or are there things that we're doing that are reducing these numbers?
I think there are some reduction. I think what we see with the increase is, I think people are more informed
Yeah.
that there are options, and so we get more outreach. So I don't know, but then during COVID, we saw numbers kind of go off the charts.
Really?
Yes, we saw a lot more domestic violence, and when you think about control, it's like you do have a lot more control because now this person has a lot more limitations, right?
Right.
About where are they going to work, or can they go to the store? You're limited on people you can visit. And so, yeah, we had to pivot very quickly during COVID, to provide services, but we definitely had women calling from the cars in the garage to get restraining orders and things like that. So it was a different kind of advocacy,
Yeah.
I would say. And as far as like our numbers around sexual assault, it's kind of too early for me to tell. But in the first quarter of this year, the numbers are pretty significant. We will serve more people. But again, as more people know that
Right.
like we are here or we're available and we're responsive, then you expect those numbers to climb. But I wish they didn't.
Yeah. So one thing that has struck me over the past couple years, particularly with college campus protests, and most specifically at Emory, because I actually saw the list of demands from the student body, one of them was to remove police presence from campus. And when I reflected on my experience at college, my roommate was sexually assaulted, and we were demanding more police presence on campus. We wanted the blue light boxes and the call boxes. We wanted accountability, and we wanted the police to be aware of what was happening so they could help us, right? And so I feel like, one, okay, I don't think we've solved this problem. And two, why is there this disconnect between the safety of women on campus versus, this wanting police presence to be gone?
That's a complicated question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the people that want less presence, I get why they do, and I also get why young female students would want more of a presence. So are the students this is the total student body though? Is that right?
Yeah, this was not the total student body, but
Okay.
the elected student body president.
Okay.
And that this was their draft of demands submitted to the president of Emory.
I think in the sexual assault community, and I'm going to compare it a lot to the domestic violence community, right? I think one of the things that we have done in the domestic violence community is had a over-reliance on law enforcement. to help us deal with this domestic violence issue. You know, I mean, and we used to say for years that domestic violence is everybody's issue. Like, this demands a community response. It demands a response from the churches, from family, from friends, from employers. And that's still true to this day, you know. And it's not one of those things that's easy to remedy or to solve. And I think sexual assault is the same way. Like, how do we, like, as a community, how do we protect people from sexual assault and at the same time honor and understand, like, the complexities of law enforcement and what they can do to actually help a community, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, like, how to hold both is the challenge that we have, you know, because I mean, there are plenty of people that think that women shouldn't call the police because, you know, sometimes they don't get great results when they call the police. Or no, there's like, if he goes to jail, then he can't work, then we can't afford the rent, then we can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I do believe that as a community, we need to get a lot more serious and intentional about the way we protect, especially women and girls.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that commitment yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we see what's happening nationally, even like when we talk about sexual assault, like the way it is not taken nearly as seriously as it should be.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Right. And then, you know, you don't want it to happen for people, for them to take it serious, you know, or someone you know, someone you love. But a lot of times that's what changes people's minds about the way things need to be dealt with. I hope I answered your question. So that's my
you
Billy.
did. I mean, and
you know,
that's you know, that's the answer for so many of these subjects, is that it's more complicated than just black and white.
It is. It is.
So, Jean, tell us about the array of services that WRC provides.
Sure. So most people, you mentioned our safe house. I mean, when people think about a domestic violence agency, that's what they think most of, is that there is what we used to call a shelter, but now we call it a safe house. So in our safe house, we can house 32 individuals in our home. But if you look at our big overall numbers of the people that we serve, that's just a small portion of the ones that we do serve. And so we have a plethora of other services for survivors as well. So we have, of course, the 24-hour crisis hotline, which is how most people find us, through either law enforcement, social workers, hospitals, word of mouth, friends. People will call our 24-hour crisis hotline. We do a lot of legal advocacy.
Oh, wow.
With the temporary protective orders. We serve over 2,000 families in that program alone. It is by far the busiest, you know, program that we have as far as like number of victims. And we've been doing that with the DeKalb County courts, superior courts and magistrate courts for as long as I've been here. It's been a tremendous relationship.
Okay.
And then we also have Nia's Place, which is supervised visitation and exchange, you know, for families where there has been separation and there's fear of safety for the child to visit. So instead of like the handoff in a parking lot at Walmart or McDonald's, it is done under, you know, the watchful eye of an advocate and security. So we offer that service. We also have a very, very thriving housing program. We have received some significant funds over the last year to assist with what we call transitional housing. I mean, we've been doing housing with our families for a while, but now we're able to do even more so. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm really proud of that we do at the Women's Resource Center is we will walk with a family for as long as we need to. And so it's great to be able to have those resources where we can do that, whether that's 2 or 3 years at a time. We do that because domestic violence is very unsettling. Like, it's not a matter of just walking out the door, getting a new lease and starting your life over. It's a lot more complicated and nuanced than that. So we do work with a lot of families in housing. We also offer support groups for sexual assault survivors as well as domestic violence survivors. And we also, conduct the forensic exams for victims of sexual assault
Okay.
as well. And so we have crisis line for both services, and then exams and support groups on the sexual assault side, and community education, and then community education also on the domestic violence side as well.
That's quite an array.
And our children's program,
Right.
which is, I talk about like what keeps me here and what has me
Sure, by all means.
still like so dedicated to this work, is the amazing programming that we have for our children. You may remember Camp Peace. We do a summer camp for close to 60 children every summer for 8 weeks with a wonderful partner, a church here in downtown Decatur, where our children come for 8 weeks. And it's regular camp in a lot of fun ways. We have swimming and field trips, but it's also, we bring in a lot of emotional learning, resilience, exercises and projects. And then there is a curriculum from Emory that we use, CBCT, which is compassion-based cognitive therapy training. Yes, so, and there are 8 components to that. And so for every week, our children will kind of delve into one of the components of that. And so the key is, how we came about this project with our children's program, it's really, really difficult to change adults. Once we get up here, like our thoughts, our habits, our consciousness is really difficult to shift. And it's like, well, why don't we start before we ever get there?
Yeah.
Right?
Breaking that cycle of
Breaking
abuse.
that cycle, yes. And so we are so serious about that.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, we're doing evaluations of the programs, and we're seeing some tremendous results. And it's so beautiful to see children behave better than adults, with how they approach conflict and how they have compassion for themselves and how they get through really hard times, you know? It just seems like with domestic violence, the abusers, it's like they just kind of lack the piece that goes from I'm angry to I'll hit you, And so the pause is important.
Yeah, 100%.
And building some different instincts and tools and how to deal with uncomfortable feelings, Because, it's a lot of times with domestic violence, it's not about the conflict. Again, it is about the power and control. And so, why do I want that and why do I need that?
Yeah, understood. Wow, that's quite an array.
Yeah.
Sorry, so you asked me.
Yes.
And I know it's the Women's Resource Center, but I know a handful of men who've been the victim of domestic violence and sexual assault. Do you serve men?
We do. And that's a pertinent question right now, because we are needing and wanting to rebrand, because especially we are the Women's Resource Center to end domestic violence, and now we are doing sexual assault. And certainly on the sexual assault side, we are seeing more male-identified folks reach out for services. And so we don't want to exclude safety for anyone. And so but we have worked on the domestic violence side, many more men with legal advocacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been doing the work. And so, how do we
Rebrand.
How do we do that?
Yep. And you've answered the question about the services for children, which is wonderful.
Fantastic. That was one of the things we wanted to specifically ask you about. So thank you for doing that. So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but wondering if you can talk a little more about other nonprofit agencies and government agencies that you all habitually partner with.
Sure. So we now have a relationship with, in addition to, DeKalb. Well, we talked in the beginning about how Women's Resource Center got started. So one year after Gwendolyn Turnbow lost her life, the Women's Resource Center got started with a $10,000 grant from DeKalb County. There was a county commissioner at that time. It was one of our founders. Sherry Schulman was her name then. And then also Judge Seeliger, who I'm sure you know, who is
do.
now retired from the bench.
Right.
Big pieces of our history. So we started with $10,000 from DeKalb County, and DeKalb remains a friend to this day of the Women's Resource Center, a supporter. And now we have through the we have a continuum of care grant for our housing program now through DeKalb. We also have partnerships with like Families First, with Our House, who's been a partner of ours for decades.
Yeah.
We work with a group with our kids called Paint Love.
Paint Love.
Yes, they're a nonprofit. Should be great for the show too.
Okay.
Yeah, they do great art projects with children in our
Okay.
community, and so they're a really big partner. And then other housing programs, Wellspring is another one that we have a great partnership with. Open Door, we have a partnership with. So we, especially on the housing side, you need a lot of partners because there are a lot of moving parts in there. Right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and limited supply.
Yes. And then we also have great partnerships with our DeKalb County Solicitor, Donna Coleman Stribling, and
Yes.
also with our DA, Sherry Boston, who now is on our board of directors because she was on the board of the DeKalb Ray Crisis Center. And so when we did the acquisition, she kind of rolled over on here, and I was so glad she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about your seed money coming from DeKalb County. What are some of your primary funding sources today?
We receive a lot of federal funding. Some of the federal funding, most of the federal funding comes through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which is the state agency that gets most of the federal funds that come in for domestic violence and sexual assault. We also have a grant through the Office of Violence Against Women, which is part of the Department of Justice. And then we have funds from the state of Georgia. So we have state, then we have local with DeKalb, we have the federal, and then the rest is what we get out and pound the pavement for. Yeah.
And do you want to talk about your big event coming up?
I certainly do. I do. So on April 30th, yes, we have our Champions for Change fundraiser where we are expecting 600 of our best friends to come and enjoy an evening of amazing storytelling, especially this year with 40 years. Great food, great auction items that we're going to have, some silent auction items, some live auction items, I think some real fun ones this year too. And so it's a really good time to remind our friends that this issue exists, this horrible, we call it plague, but this horrible traumatic work still needs to be done, and we want people to know that they can play a role in that. And so we ask our friends to step up and support us and kind of take out and spread the word and learn more about this issue and how they can support people in their lives, because everybody, everyone knows someone
Oh, yeah.
that's affected by domestic violence. And so, and if someone knows you know about domestic violence, they're going to come to you even more seeking support.
Yeah.
Well, I've attended that event in the past.
Are you coming back?
We'll see. I'm trying to work it out.
Okay.
So, I can attest that it's a great event and a great venue down at the Georgia Aquarium. So I was always happy to attend that in the past. So in reading through some of your information, I noticed that the word compassion comes up a lot. So why don't you tell us what that word compassion means to you?
Gosh. Yeah, it means, for me, like caring without a filter, you know? To care because it's the right thing to do, and it's something that like we all deserve, you know? So you will hear a lot. And interestingly enough, like the compassion and empathy pieces came in pretty strong for the Women's Resource Center once we decided to evolve and grow and expand our children's program. Because it's like It's what we thought. It's like, what will keep one human being from hurting another human being? Like, how do I actually see you as a person and not an object, not as a thing, right? And so if we can help develop like that compassion and empathy, then you're least likely to hurt another person and least likely to hurt yourself. And so it drives the work, you know. And so many of the survivors and the victims that we meet, there's just such a great deal of shame
Yeah.
and secrecy. And I find that when people can sense that you have compassion, then they trust you more to help.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Actually, on a side note, I regard compassion as a very important component of leadership. I used to, when I was in office, I used to do a presentation, thoughts on leadership, where I listed my 7 leadership qualities, and compassion was certainly one of them. So that's why I wanted to have you expound on what that word means.
Yeah,
means to you.
I hope I did that justice.
Yeah, without question.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought up the safe house. What, and forgive me if you did already say this, what is the capacity of the safe house?
32.
32.
32.
And that's both women and children?
Correct.
And then how long can they stay?
Well, it's up to 90 days.
Okay.
Up to 90 days. Sometimes it's beyond, sometimes it's less. As Barbara Gibson says, she's our director of programs, we do people over programs.
Yeah.
So it's more based on the individual need, because everybody's situation is not the same.
Right.
You know, and to treat it as such would do a great injustice to the work. So we can't, you know, it's like when we say yes to one family being there, we have to say no to another family being there. And so it's been like, we've been so conflicted over like helping people as much as we can and helping as many people as we can.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and the plan, and part of our strategic plan is to, like, without a doubt, 100%, when people leave our safe house, when the families leave, is that they have another solid place to land.
Right.
Because that's the important piece, you know. You know, people wonder a lot of times why people go back and why, you know, and there are several reasons why people do, but what we have found is if she believes that she can provide a home and food and clothing, all the basic necessities, you know, and be able to take care of herself and children, she's more likely to not return than, you know, if those things were not in place, you know. And that's not the only reason people, you know, return, but it's huge, right?
It is.
Because, you know, especially if you feel like you're being harmed more so than your children, then you might take that so that your children have some security and a place to sleep in their neighborhood and their teachers and their friends that they know and want to be around. Because, and this is the thing about domestic violence that still like really perturbs me to this day, is what the victims have to do to resolve and get safety for themselves. It's quite, your life is so uprooted. And the person that harms you is not necessarily have to.
Right. Right.
You know, like with a restraining order, you know, even though you have one, you know, you still may end up leaving, but, you know, at least you get to stay in your home with your family and in your community and seek support. So.
Yeah, and when you've been abused and you've been told, you know, if it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, and you've been told you're worthless, you know, and then you're desperate on top of it. I mean, what, you know, unless you have that continuum of care to help you see and actually live a different experience. I mean,
it's funny the way we're wired, because even when it's someone that has like kind of this power and control of your life, like when people speak things into you, it's hard to not absorb that and, you know, really not take it to heart and believe that it's true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if you're not in a relationship with this. So imagine like if there's just like this constant messaging in you that you're not good enough.
right.
Yeah.
And that you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you alluded to this individual earlier, but I want you to expound on Gwendolyn and Turnbow, whose situation was the impetus for starting this. Please, for the sake of our audience, tell us who she was and what happened.
Yeah. You know, I'm fortunate that I know her daughter, so I get to learn so much more about her. Gosh, she was such a talented woman from Mississippi, and um, went to college and had been married once, and she got divorced and moved to hot Atlanta, where everybody says, right, it's the land of opportunity. And she did. She came here. She went to graduate school and had really good jobs. Met another man that she ended up marrying and have a son with. And yeah, unfortunately, you know, it's when I hear Natasha talk about her mom, it's because, you know, when we think about, especially someone who's lost their life to domestic violence, that's kind of like the only dimension we might see them in is like she got battered and she died. But there is so much more in between. You know, she was a planner. She loved to cook. Like, she had her menus on the refrigerator every week of like what her family, you know, what she was going to feed her family. She had a record player. She loved music, you know, and her daughter loves music and loves the music that her mother played. Like, she had friends. She had a full life cut way too short, but she was more than Joel Grimet's victim,
Right.
you know. And she fought like hell to stay alive. I mean, she really fought it. She was strategic, thoughtful, smart, you know, about it. She had gone and stayed in a shelter at that time. We didn't have one at that time, but you know, had lived there. And I mean, she fought with all her might, kept meticulous records of things that had happened to her, and it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, she was going to work that day that she lost her life, and her son was going to school and still trying to start life anew again.
Yeah.
Again. And yeah, so when I first started doing this work, that's all I had was there was a woman that left her batterer, and he found her and killed her. That was all I knew. And then a few years ago, we were featured in a documentary. And Nicholas Kristof, who's a New York Times columnist, who also wrote a book called A Path Appears and Half the Sky, and he shares the stories of different organizations throughout the world that are working on the oppression of women, whether that's sexual assault, sex trafficking, domestic violence. And so with A Path Appears, he featured a local groups. The first book was more international, heard about our work and came and featured the Women's Resource Center. So in my sit down conversation, just like I'm sitting here talking with you, he asked me, well, whatever happened to the kid? It's like, I don't know. And we had this amazing volunteer at the time who, I always tell this part, she's a librarian because she liked to do research. Like, that's what you think of, like librarians, right? Who can go and find things out, and she did. And what we found out is that Gwendolyn had a daughter that was a freshman at the University of Georgia, and who was by her first husband. Natasha Trethewey is her name. And I'd read Natasha's work. I knew that she had lost her mother to domestic violence because she was teaching at Emory, living here in Atlanta at the time. And she's U.S. Poet Laureate. So she has this amazing platform to put this issue out there and to talk about it. So I'd heard that, but I had no idea that this woman that I've been telling this story about that had left her abuser was Natasha's mother. And yeah, we reached out to her. And so it's been a a really good thing for me as I continue to do this work over the decades. And we're actually going to feature Natasha in a video at the 40th anniversary.
Okay, very good.
Because every time I hear her speak about what her mom went through and all of the challenges and the roadblocks and the resilience that she had, it just makes me even more determined to do this work.
Understood.
That's a long, long
No,
answer.
thank you. But I wanted to afford you that opportunity to expound on Gwendolyn and who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about her a lot.
Yeah.
I think about her a lot. I know that like any phone call we get could be another Gwendolyn on the other line.
Right.
You know, anytime the doorbell rings, it could be, you know. And unfortunately, here in our county, DeKalb County had the highest number of domestic violence fatalities in 2025.
Wow.
So we've got work to do.
Yeah,
We have work to do.
We do have work to do.
Do you know that number off the top of your head?
I believe it's 17.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable.
So what happened to her son?
Yeah, so he's 40 years later now, right? 41 years later, yeah, and he's okay.
He's okay?
I think as okay as somebody can be
Yeah.
that witnessed that kind of trauma.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So we want to lighten it up just a little bit and learn a little bit more about you. So tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina.
As did I. Well, I was born in Charlotte.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with a little town called Waxhaw, North Carolina?
Of course.
Yeah, I lived there with my
course.
grandparents for 4 years.
We used to call that the country.
It's not the country anymore. Have you been up there lately?
No, but I
oh my
hear
God. I was
about
up
it.
there couple years ago because my mom's
Yeah.
side of the family is from that area. So I went to see my last living aunt from my mom's generation a couple years ago, and just I got to go see Waxhaw. It's like it's been transformed. It's like a
Yeah.
little bedroom Tony community in the suburbs of Charlotte.
It
now.
is.
Back when I was a kid, it was the country.
It
But anyway,
is.
continue. I interrupted you.
Yeah, I grew up there, and I'm a Tar Heel. I went to UNC, graduated from there, studied psychology. Not even quite sure what I wanted to do. I imagined I was going to be a child psychologist, you know, and then, but I didn't do that. Yeah, it's like when I landed at the Women's Resource Center, all things changed. Yeah, I left North Carolina, lived in Memphis, Tennessee for a moment, came to DeKalb County back in the late 1980s. 89, I think, is the year that I actually moved here, 89. And then my earlier career, actually, I was a headhunter. Yeah. I did
Very
that.
good.
Yeah, I think I've always been a salesperson of some sort.
As are we.
Yeah. It really comes in handy, especially
It
when you're
does.
fundraising.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
That skill set is handy.
Yeah, I was the annoying Girl Scout cookie. Yeah.
What are your favorite? What are your
I
favorite
don't
brand
think
of Girl
there's
Scout
such
cookies?
thing as an annoying Girl Scout cookie seller.
What's your favorite? What's your
the
favorite?
truffles were my favorite.
I'm a do-si-do.
Oh, yeah.
Samoas. Hello.
Yeah.
Samoas are pretty good.
They are.
Okay, all right. We're not going to debate it.
Yeah.
At least we don't have to share.
That's true.
We all
don't.
like different ones.
All right, that's good.
So tell us about your family.
I have a partner. We live in Eastlake, and I have a 24-year-old son who graduated from Georgia State, who works and lives here also. And so, small family. I just have one brother and two nephews.
Nice.
Well, no, on this side.
Okay.
Yeah. So small family, lots of friends, but big community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friends are the family that we adopt.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve and I often talk about our favorite movies and TV shows. Do you have any favorites?
Gosh, I don't watch TV much at all. I watch YouTube every night, and there is this, I don't know if you call it a show or what, but it's called The Local Project.
Okay.
And it's these architects that build their own homes. And it's fascinating because these homes are just so amazing. A lot of them are in Australia, New Zealand, but most of them in places like surrounded by so much nature. Like you can almost not find it, and they're like in these hidden secret places with these amazing views and just surrounded. It's pretty special. So I look at some of those over and over again, and I like the Homeworthy, which is also, I guess there's a theme here to
Yeah.
homes, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and honestly, after the kind of day I have, I don't do anything heavy.
Right.
Like my mother used to watch all of these crime shows, and it's like I can't do that. I don't
No
like
Olivia Benson for you.
none of that, none of that. And it's like there's women always getting sexual out. Like I can't. So yeah, I like things that are like light and funny.
Yeah.
I'm a big Josh Johnson fan. I don't know if you know him. He is on The Daily, but he has his own YouTube channel. You would like him.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a really good comedian. So
Nice.
I need to laugh and I need to imagine, and I love nature.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
anything outside. So I like to travel.
Nice.
Very good. Do you have a favorite destination that you've either been to or that's on your list to go to?
I do. If I was going to do like a nature trip, I loved Glacier National Park. It was great. And I went to Switzerland for Christmas.
Very nice.
Yeah, I took a train ride on Christmas Day on this train called the Glacier Express. It's the slowest express train there is. It only goes 24 miles an hour. It's an 8-hour trip.
Wow.
You get like a 4-course meal, but you're going through the Swiss Alps.
Yeah,
And
that
it's
that
stunning.
sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I didn't expect that to be at the top of my list, but I loved it because I like being cold.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Oh,
you keep
man.
naming these cold spots.
Okay.
do.
Well,
I do.
we are opposite because it's cold. I don't do cold that well.
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't mention any movies or TV shows, so this question may not be in alignment, but I'm gonna ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Which is, do you have any celebrity crushes or famous people that you have a little crush on that you want to share?
Oh, I have a story.
Oh, by all means.
I do.
Well, then I'm glad I asked it.
Okay. So I went to a food festival in the Bahamas. And there was an opening act. And I wanted to go to this food festival before I even knew who the opening act was going to be. They have a musical act. And the opening act was Lenny Kravitz.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
Lenny Kravitz opened up the food festival. This was back in October. Not only that, but I don't know if you know his music, but there's this
little
song
bit.
he has called Let Love Rule.
Yes.
Okay.
So he comes off the stage and walks through the audience, and he comes straight to me, grabs my hand, and we sing Let Love Rule together.
Wow.
Right?
That's pretty cool.
And then you haven't washed your hands since.
I didn't watch it that night.
Oh,
I didn't
my
watch
God.
it that night.
Well, that's a pretty good story. See,
Right?
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Lenny Kravitz is pretty cool, I have to
He's
say.
definitely one of my favorites.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, we're going to kind of wind things down. So as we get into that mode, is there anything further you'd like to share with our audience, how they can be of help to the organization, or any message that you want to impart?
Yeah, I would say learn as much as you can about sexual assault and domestic violence. Be informed so that you can be of service to others, a support for others, have compassion and empathy for others. We don't have all the answers at the Women's Resource Center, but we do stand with people, and that's kind of what you need to do. So, like, if you know more about it, you can kind of not hit some of those faux pas, like, why don't you just leave, and why do you let him keep doing it, things like that. So, yeah, to understand it and get engaged, volunteer,
Okay.
financially support, but know about it, and for young women especially, on this night scene, just don't ever go alone.
Yeah.
Stay with someone. Promise each other that you will, and absolutely do that. I'm just, in the year that I've been doing this work, it's a critical message to get out there. People just need to know where you are, and you need to be safe.
Yeah. And what about the future of this organization and your future? How much longer do you intend to do this?
I definitely wouldn't say that on a podcast.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Fair
No,
enough.
I got a really, really big project coming up, and so
Okay.
in about 6 months, have me back, and I'll talk
Okay.
about
Okay.
it.
All right. That sounds wonderful.
I do have one more question for you.
Yes.
For those listeners who may know someone or be a victim of domestic violence, what steps should they take?
Call us. You know, it's been interesting because as we've been looking at rebranding, you know, we find that people have been going to ChatGPT, victims, a great deal. And it really does have like this safety planning conversation with you and everything. And I mean, I'm conflicted about that. I mean, I'm glad the information is so accessible, but sometimes you just need a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Do you have the number off the top of your
yes,
head?
I do. You can find the Women's Resource Center at www.wrc, D as in David, V as in Victor.org. A lot of resources on there, a lot of good things to read about this work. And you can also reach us on our crisis line at 404-688-9436.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jean, for sharing your insights with us today on this very, very serious topic. It was certainly informative. I hope it was at least a little bit fun for you to share. And thanks again for
Well, I
taking
miss
the
seeing
time.
you and talking to you. So
Yeah,
this is
well,
good.
you know, since I've been out of office, I've been, you know, kind of laying low. But
Yeah.
we started this, and we're having a good time with it. So we're really honored that you carved out some time to be with us. So thank you. Emily, thank you again, as always, for sharing the foxhole with
My
me.
pleasure.
Any closing comments that you'd like to share?
It's just been really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I don't think I know a single person who hasn't been affected in one way or another, either as a child witnessing it, or you know, knowing someone close to them who's experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, rape. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and I hope that you have a great event on April 30th.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks again to Davis Manufacturing and Reeves Associates for sponsoring this program today. Thanks again to our amazing team here at Scottdale Podcast Cafe for doing an outstanding job in supporting us. For our audience, if you have any ideas about possible guests or future topics, please visit our website and drop us a note at servesomebodypodcast.com or via the normal social media platforms. Also note that our episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We understand that time is the most valuable resource that any of us have. So we sincerely thank you for spending some of your precious time giving us a listening ear. We will never take that for granted. These are indeed serious times, so until the next time, just remember to think for yourself and don't fall for the show. Goodbye.
You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the Lord, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now.